Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, one and all. Welcome back to Beard and the Boyo podcast.
Ta-da.
That was a great theme tune. I love your theme tune. We already have a theme tune, remember?
That's the other theme tune.
That's the unofficial theme tune. Returning, obviously, is myself, Jake, and good old John.
Hello.
But we do have a sprinkle of velvet with us this week in the form of White Barry White.
Hello.
Mr. James Hatzisavis, Greek to everyone who knows and loves him.
Good to be here, all the way from Greece.
All the way from Greece.
Very happy.
Are you actually from Greece?
Half from Greece?
Half from Greece.
Half
You mean
from
like
Greece.
one leg was like standing in Greece and the other was
Yeah.
like, and then you sort of popped out on the border.
It was quite difficult.
Yeah.
A very traumatic birth.
Of course.
But, you're none the worse for it.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
He's all the better for it.
All the
There's a
better.
sprinkle of insanity.
Mm.
Nice. I love
Babe.
it. Why is James with us this week? Because James is a bit of a wizard on all things kaiju. And we decided to discuss Godzilla. More specifically, Godzilla 2, King of the Monsters, which has just come out in cinemas. Well, it's been out a couple of months now, but still fresh as far as the movie is concerned. So we thought what we're going to do is review the film, discuss obviously the sort of the monster universe that they're building, and discuss as well sort of like how accurate it is to, you know, all the sort of kaiju lore that's come before it. Hence why we have our kaiju historian James with us.
Ooh, that is a good title.
Kaiju historian.
Kaiju historian.
I feel like you're going to take that and slap it on your CV. And yeah.
I've got a black belt in Kaiju Jitsu.
Kaiju.
Oh,
jitsu.
whoa.
There it is.
So
This isn't a comedy, James.
Now, no pressure now. 'Cause now I made myself look amazing, and I'm not.
James
Oh.
Hatzisavis, the funny one.
the funny one, absolutely no pressure. Dance
No pressure now. Make everyone laugh now.
Yeah, you will be funny. So, welcome to the Podzilla. So, first things first, we're going to discuss, obviously, the plans they have for this cinematic universe. Shut up, chat. It feels like everybody and their nans is trying to do a movie universe at the moment.
But aside from Marvel, this is the only one that seems to be working.
I was going to say,
It's
out of
strangely
everything
so.
so far, makes sense.
Mm.
You know, there's an awful lot of subject matter that they've got there. And they've got an awful lot of iconic monsters as well.
Yes.
I would kind of look at Godzilla and King Kong as like a Batman and a Superman.
I was going to say exactly the same
Like-
thing in this. I think that what they've done here is what should have happened with Batman v Superman.
Yes.
They've both had an opportunity to prove themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They've both got the new film that's kind of leading into the next part, and then finally they'll meet.
Yeah,
Instead
yeah.
of us having a brand new Batman and then being like,
Yeah.
oh, look, they're fighting, and then like all that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, I hope it's going to go well. I mean, I hope that Kong isn't going to find out that, you know, his mum is called Mothra, and then they're both going to stop fighting, and then it's just going to happen. But yeah, it just looks like they're doing it a lot better.
One thing I do want to say, in terms of... Because the next film's Godzilla versus Kong. isn't it?
yeah.
Like, I love King Kong. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm kind of on his side in many ways. But how is he going to stand a chance? Because he is basically just a giant gorilla.
Yeah.
Godzilla can shoot fire.
Yeah, Godzilla's got
Like,
freaking
yes.
laser
I just-
beams.
It's got atomic breath, yeah.
I don't
but-
understand how Godzilla is... how King
Well, if
Kong
you've
is
seen
going to
the
last
original
2
film,
minutes.
if he gets
Yeah.
hit by lightning, his power increases.
Who's this, Kong?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I
So if
wasn't
he
aware
gets
of
hit
that.
by... It's not going to happen in the film. That's what happened in the original
Okay.
Godzilla vs. Kong film, which I don't know if
Right,
anyone's
okay.
had the pleasure to see.
I wish
But
I
it is
had.
phenomenal.
Is it
phenomenal.
like black and white balls old, or is it?
It's
how old
not
is
black
this
and white old, but it's people running around in sweaty suits, that
Right.
kind of thing.
I've heard
I
that
s-
at one point you see the Kong suit open at the back and you see the guys...
It wouldn't surprise. It's mainly slapstick where you will see, you know, like Kong will roll to do an attack, he'll fall on the floor and knock himself out, and then Godzilla just starts burying him slowly. They fight over a building, fall into the ocean, and then Godzilla drowns and King Kong swims away. I say King Kong, it's Kong. Have to keep that very specific.
But interestingly, it's still better than Batman versus Superman.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of different things as well with the American one, and in the Japanese one it's said that both of them lived and one of them swam away, but I think in the
nice.
American one they kind of wanted Kong to win because, you know,
That's
King
okay.
Kong, it's kind of like an American thing against the
That is
Japanese
true.
thing.
So King Kong, I guess, is not from the kaiju stuff
No, yeah,
originally.
King
then.
Kong's actually different.
Yeah.
King Kong's size is much different. as
So
well.
how have they got away with that? Like,
Well, obviously-
Well, it's a
splicing the two
different
together?
Kong
Kaiju.
Skull Island, he's massive, isn't he?
He's
They've
huge.
obviously done that with a forward-thinking, we
Yes.
want him to fight Godzilla at some point. But give us a bit of an insight there, because you said something there. So King Kong and Godzilla are originally from different sort of
Yes, different
stories.
film universe.
So this is like
completely.
doing like a Wolverine and a Superman movie.
It's they wanted their own version of a Kong thing, and also the Kong that was from the original films was actually, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that knows it, but it's believed to have been derived from. It was actually going to be a Frankenstein creature.
Right, okay.
Because there's another kaiju which is called Frankenstein, which is essentially like a huge Frankenstein. Which is why in the film when King Kong gets hit by lightning, he powers up.
Right,
Because
okay.
that makes more sense for the Frankenstein thing.
Yeah.
But that didn't end up happening. They ended
But
up
they
doing
kept the
Kong.
idea with lightning.
Yeah. I believe so.
I am
Anyway.
glad they did.
Yeah.
I like it. I like King Kong.
But the new Kong is much bigger. In prior, I don't know if you've seen that yourself.
I haven't
Sean.
seen Kong Skull Island.
Well, that one that's got quite good things to it. But that one, he's a much bigger species because King Kong is meant to be some variant of a Gigantopithecus, which you probably know yourself. While Kong is based on a kaiju species, which are meant to be much larger. They're
So
these
are they
ancient,
actually
super
different
ancient
characters,
species.
King Kong?
Completely
and Kong?
different.
Right, okay, address that then, because obviously you've had Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you saying that Kong from Kong Skull Island, they're, as far as anybody is concerned, they're like, it's a different telling of the same story.
Yeah.
But King Kong and Kong, you're saying, are two completely separate.
Which is quite simple for most kaiju fans know that it's like, oh, that's a different Kong, that's a this Kong. But we are in that world of so many reboots and things.
Yeah.
And new, like the Spider-Man one and then the new Spider-Man one a week after. And people get, it can be quite easy to think like, oh, is that from that one? Particularly because there is like, once again, he's on a mysterious island that you can't get to. He's a big gorilla.
Because King Kong lives on Skull
It kinda
Island as
mixes
well.
in.
It's the, that's
Yeah.
So it's all kind of mixed into the same
Yeah.
mythos.
Yeah.
But a lot of things are all based off the same myths anyway. It's just a
This is
different
already
telling.
hurting my head.
Yeah.
Never mind American Zilla,
So
which I refuse to call Godzilla.
Yeah.
That's something else.
Godzilla from obviously Final Wars. That
That is fantastic.
Final Wars saves everything.
It does.
Just I don't know if you know about this. So
I know.
excuse me. There's a Godzilla film, obviously, that the Americans made where he
This is the Godzilla 98.
yes,
Yeah.
which the Japanese filmmakers, I can't remember like what company it is. They made a film called Godzilla Final Wars, where it turns out they brought this Godzilla from the '98 film into the continuity.
Bought the rights.
Okay.
They bought the rights purely to give it 30 seconds of screen time and kill it
That's wonderful.
by having it getting shot into the Sydney Opera House.
Yeah.
And they called it Zilla because they refused to basically admit that it was Godzilla.
They
I
were
thought
like,
that was the
oh,
most wonderful
Godzilla.
thing.
America had Godzilla. It's like, no, they were confused. He was just Zilla. He's just a little thing. And
This-
how right they are.
Just to rewind slightly, you mentioned mythology before.
Yes.
So are these characters for? I always assume these characters have been created for films. Are they actually based on mythology?
They had, but there's a lot of things derived from myth and stuff.
Okay.
They need to mix it into the world. So when there's like a myth about a dragon or this or that, they try to tie it in with the kaiju that happens.
Sure.
So they're not actually, there isn't real myths and
There was
stuff
never.
of
There's
them.
not like the Godzilla myth where like
but they're all based.
found some bones and then
Godzilla was obviously the whole metaphor for Hiroshima, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yes, it was
that's
when
what
it
I
first
thought.
began.
Like, that's how Godzilla started. So, was there a similar thing for Kong, or was that?
Not quite, I believe. No, he wasn't really a metaphor for that. I mean, it's more of a, almost like a racist approach of like, that like all these islands with villages and all this stuff, because it was very much an old thing. But
Yeah, of course. So obviously, part of a bigger universe.
yes.
Hell of a lot of source material to go off for these films.
Oh god, there's a lot.
Based on what we've seen so far, how much are they getting right?
They are getting, in my opinion, quite a lot right. The last film particularly was quite a love letter to Godzilla fans. It was quite phenomenal. My favourite era is the Heisei era. I don't know if you know about the different eras of Godzilla.
No.
But compared to, say, like James Bond, there's like, loads of different films of them. And it's all kind of the same, but a little bit different. They never quite delve into it. There's specific eras in Godzilla where each one's separated into its own like categories. And my favourite one is the Heisei era.
So what year roughly is that?
1989, I believe, just before I was born, which is why it's my favourite one.
Sweaty suits, but realistic sweaty suits?
Yes, yeah. Quite detailed sweaty suits.
You can really see the sweat.
But then again, though, they, because obviously, as you know, with Final Wars, they, after even doing CGI, they were like, no, we're going to get the sweaty suits back up.
Yeah.
Even after delving into that. But yeah, the Heisei era, which is where it gets quite serious with a lot of the stories, because I'm not even going to go into what happened to Godzilla in the kind of 60s, 70s kind of thing. There's Ghidorah, the toxic smog monster. all of a sudden, in the middle of that film, it just starts going like the Beatles style animation, and also it's a bit weird, and people are dance around, and then
Godzilla just trip out in the middle.
Godzilla does lots of things like flies and things like that,
kinda
and
feel
all
like I
sorts
need
of
to see this.
insane things.
Is that where the infamous gif of like Godzilla's flying feet
I
first
am
comes
become
from?
deaf, just flying at
Is that
people.
where, I wondered
Yes.
where that was from.
Yeah.
And we're like lots of very
Godzilla
awkward,
versus Yellow Submarine.
family-friendly things, maybe competing with Gamera at the time, who was lover of all children, which is not meant to be that, friend to all children, not lover of all children. Please, don't take that bit. Oh God,
Yeah.
that's much different. Yeah. But at the time, everything was quite hippie-ish. Everyone was like, oh, he's come to save us. Took a completely different approach to how the
Godzilla,
original
dude.
Godzilla was. Because the original Godzilla, metaphor for like death and nuclear apocalypse, and this epitome of a physical manifestation of the thing that you can't comprehend with nuclear attacks and things like that. Kind of got distorted with the American version, where they tried to downplay a lot of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the 70s and a lot of other monster suit things, they just he started changing a bit. But
Yeah.
the Heisei era is a lovely balance between getting that same kind of action, kind of that he's kind of a good guy, kind of not, but also balancing it with the threat and stuff. It's still a monster movie, and Godzilla isn't necessarily good in that one. He's just a force of nature.
It's just a force
I
of
love
nature.
the notion that like they've tried to like downplay Hiroshima in the form of
God,
Godzilla. Yeah,
They really did, because they didn't want to be like, that's our fault.
We didn't do that. We didn't create Godzilla. No
There's
way,
an
man.
American actor who's like plonked into the film,
Yeah.
and he has like this little like accomplice, and they just keep bouncing between themselves and kind of glazing over
That's
the real
so funny.
meaning of the film.
Yeah.
It's quite something.
I'd
strange
never thought about that before. But,
No.
But yes, in terms of what you were saying though, because this bones back, King Ghidorah is in that, and this is very close to that. Obviously, different origins, but I can completely respect the origins that they give for them in the new films. It's a new universe, and very nuclear based in them. In the new one, they're going that they're older creatures, that they're like these super massive creatures from a completely ancient time, and it's because of the different themes that they're trying to get across. Then it was like nuclear, like what the threats of that are and stuff like that, and that's not the themes that we have in current fears and things like that. They're going a lot more on the environment. They're thinking like, what are we doing to the environment? What could happen? How could we get repercussions from that? And they're kind of a manifestation of both like nature clawing back, but also like the wrath of nature, and also like the salvation of nature as well. I mean, in a lot of the small print as well, it talks about how like the radioactivity of them kaiju kind of like brings back nature wherever they go. So that's a thing, and that's kind of like what the new films are about there.
Yeah, and it's like you were saying before about Godzilla being, he's more of a good guy, so to speak, which is definitely more in tone with, like you say, how it used to be. I remember a lot of like Western audiences going in to see Gareth Edwards' 2014 Godzilla, not knowing that Godzilla was the good guy in this, especially, which I thought was really clever with the way they marketed the film, because they edited a lot of shots exclusively for trailers. If you remember, they made Godzilla purely out as the bad guy, and they hid the true antagonist, the Mutos,
which were phenomenal.
But like, I remember my dad turning to me halfway through when we went to see Godzilla, and he said, "Shit, it's Godzilla the good guy in this."
See, that majorly backfired for me though, because that was one of the reasons why I didn't go and see it.
Right, okay.
Because it just looked like Godzilla 98 again, but with better effects.
Yeah,
Like,
which I
think
can see.
If I'd got the sense that it was going to be very different, I'd have probably been more keen to see it.
That's the sad thing about trailers these days as well, is like how much can they give away?
You can't win, can you?
You can't win. If they give away too
Yeah.
much, they spoil it. But for me, not knowing that and going in and realising there's another kaiju that I had no idea about blew my mind. I'm sitting there
like,
just like...
when there's that egg.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was going to be... Is that Mothra? And then like, because I'm a super stupid person. When the trailer was on, I'm sitting there pausing it every single second, and I saw something flying. I'm like, that's Rhodan. That's got to be Rhodan. That, and obviously it wasn't. But I was like thinking, there's something else in there. There's something else going on.
Yeah,
and I did very much appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%.
But,
and I will say, like, there's one thing the first film, because I think when they made the first film, they weren't quite sure they were doing the universe.
Yeah.
I think it was while they were making the film, or just after it, that they realised the potential for like a bigger story.
They knew they wanted to do more, but also like, because all the kaiju in it are all made up ones at that point.
Muto is completely made up for that film at this
brand new.
point.
Had you seen the other two kaiju as well that were made up for it?
No.
I remember seeing sneaky shots of when one of the Comic-Cons they released sneaky footage of the film before it was going to come out, and in that there's a different kaiju dead on the floor that never made it into the film.
Oh, really?
Some kind of six-legged, kind of basilisk-looking creature, and I was like, "Oh, what's that going to be? Is that going to be in it?" And
That's
that never came up. But that was one of the things they were teasing with having other kaiju, but obviously not having the rights to do the rest.
That's what I was going to say. At this point in time, they didn't have the rights to Ghidorah, Mothra, Rhodan. There's that little Easter egg of Mothra in
on the tank,
on the tank,
the little bug thing.
But they didn't have the rights to any of them, so it's all like little teasers at this point.
I mean, my belief in that is that Godzilla is a strong enough character that if the film was bad, they would happily make another Godzilla film.
Yes.
While if, say, King Ghidorah was in the first one and they messed it up, it would be a while before we see him come back in another film.
Totally
so it's
agree.
easy to be like, Godzilla's strong enough, and let's see if other kaiju can make it later on, which now they have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad.
Don't forget, you've got the wonderful moment at the end of Kong, where the credits are going up, and obviously we know the post-credit scene's coming, and it says Godzilla is licensed property of Toho, this, whatever, and then it says King Ghidorah, Rhodan and Mothra. Also, I was like, what? I'm just sitting there and saying, like, what the shit is in this post-credit sequence? And obviously, like, it's just obviously paintings on a wall, but it was the promise of more to come, which made it such a tantalising prospect. One thing I was going to say as well is, in terms of Godzilla in that first film, like, the direction was, for lack of a more sophisticated phrase, the tits in justifying the scale of Godzilla. Like, that build up to his first proper appearance is one of the best pieces of cinema I've seen. Obviously in IMAX it like made me shit rainbows in my pants.
I could see them from the other side of the cinema.
Absolutely,
it was great.
Just the way they built him up, you know, the tsunami going, the water going out, and then he stand there and the flares light him up, and like you feel the rumble. And
really feel like you're seeing it from the people's perspective.
Well,
it like took the only kind of slightly good thing from Cloverfield and just injected it all into that film.
Well, the first time you see his foot when he stands up against the Muto in the airport, it's kind of like it is from a person's perspective.
That depth of sound as well. I've got to give it to them for the sound in that film.
The sound
you feel
in that
like
film was
you can feel it.
Stunning.
It was
like,
phenomenal.
Even just when he's swimming under the boats and it cuts the wide from up above, and you can see the entire boat, and you still don't get you can't see the entire outline of Godzilla. Like, they did such a good job with the scale of Godzilla. Like, obviously the big weakness of that film is we've only got about 10 minutes of Godzilla time. Yeah. But it's what they did with him that was absolutely magical. And you know, props to it's Gareth Edwards who directed that film. You ever heard of a film called Monsters? That's literally a £10,000 film. That's his only portfolio before he went to do Godzilla.
I love that film.
And it's one of my favourite films.
Fantastic.
But it's kind of like a testament to a director who hasn't been suckered into Hollywood to just make his vision.
Because it could have just been a big old action flick again.
Yes.
Here's a big monster. It's dead. It was more beautiful than that.
And it was poetry what he did with Godzilla. But I just wanted to throw that one out there because it's important to appreciate that. So, obviously then we had Kong Skull Island.
Yes.
And now we've got Godzilla 2.
Interesting thing about Kong, just as a random thing, you have Loki, Nick Fury, and Captain Marvel all fighting Kong.
All fighting Kong,
So you know. And also then, when you go to the first one, you have Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
Yes.
We have a lot of Marvel characters popping up in them things. But anyway.
Those siblings are screwing each other in the first Godzilla film.
That is so horrendous to think about.
They came out the same summer.
Yeah.
So Age of Ultron and Godzilla are there, and I'm watching the two characters like, you pretty much just sit on the sofa and get it on.
Can I argue that Age of Ultron was 2015?
Oh, he's going to be that guy.
I am going to be that guy. Sorry, but it was. Because I was born, man.
We're born. I can vouch for this. You were born. You're definitely here.
Or was I?
To be fair,
maybe I'm timeless.
He thinks, therefore he is. He could just be, in an asylum with a straitjacket on, going 2015 Ultron and just rocking back and forth.
Do you know, I can believe that you two.
Only your horrible mind could make this face of mine.
You two are my illusions.
What beautiful illusions we are. Yeah. So yes, flashing forward, we finally get to Godzilla 2 King of the Monsters.
I've seen this one.
You've seen this one.
You've seen this one.
I've seen this one.
See, I haven't seen the others, but you've seen this one.
I've seen this one.
Interesting. I'd like to know how that makes you feel. Okay.
So obviously it's kind of like, I'm waiting for Godzilla versus Kong. Like, this is kind of not filler by any stretch of the imagination, but there's like bigger fish to fry. It's kind of like how I looked at Age of Ultron, knowing Infinity War was coming. Like, I know there's the film that I want to see coming out next year, but obviously this film was kind of a way of, in the same way that we went from just Batman and Superman to branching out to the rest of the Justice League, we now have bridging out to kaiju lore. So, you know, what were you like going in? Was this like, oh, this is everything I've ever wanted?
Well, for me, yeah, because
expectations go again.
My original kaiju films, there's very little of Kong, so a lot of people are looking forward to that, and I'm glad that as soon as the film was out, they literally were just announcing the next one, here it comes, blah blah blah. But for me, like, I mean, one of my favourite films is Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. So to see King Ghidorah in film, another absolutely massive kaiju. Very hard to do kaiju being a giant three-headed dragon. They've only started to do dragons right in films quite recently. So it was phenomenal to see it. And for me, this is kind of not a bigger one in a way, because this one really addressed like the nostalgia I had for them, where you see Rhodan, Mothra flying around, King Ghidorah. They're all my favourite kaiju. I mean, nothing will beat the scale, I believe, of when Godzilla vs. Kong does come out. That will be phenomenal, and I think for that film it will be the best one. But I really wanted to see these kaiju finally on film in full glory, and they hadn't had the chance to have that before. You know, Kong and Godzilla have had that chance, and these kaiju have never had that chance. No, and I was just very buzzed for that.
And then obviously the trailer came out. Did you do your thing and not watch anything?
I watched enough of the trailer to see if it was going in the right direction, and then I stopped. Because I did hear from a few people, because trailers do it these days, that they showed a little bit too much.
Well, the very first trailer, which had that, I don't know if you've heard it, that it had that dramatic rescore of Claire de Lune. Do you know the one I'm referring to?
I do know which one you're talking to.
Which, honestly, that's one of the best trailers of any film I've ever seen. And I was like you, thinking my expectations are like through the roof now, because it just looks phenomenal. Like that shot of Mothra spreading its wings, and it just seemed to like tick so many boxes. And you know, like you, I was like, I'm ready for this. Like I'm not as versed as you in kaiju lore, but I respect and I've read up a little bit and acknowledge the world that they're trying to build from it. So I was like, I'm ready to be hit with your best shot. I was dribbling. Did you see any promotional material?
I saw like the cinematic trailer.
Did you dribble, John?
I had a little dribble.
Where from?
Well, many orifices.
I'm now banned from the IMAX in Liverpool. Let's put it that way. Okay, so
good.
Yeah, good.
But I find it interesting, like how they've done the structure of this.
Okay.
Because sort of obviously, like you say, everyone's waiting for Godzilla versus Kong. They're the two characters that everyone knows. Whereas, as you were saying, these other kaiju, is that the right word?
Kaiju,
yeah. Like I'd never heard of King Ghidorah or Mothra or anything like that, and so it almost feels like they've sort of suckered us in a little bit, because it's like, okay, look, we've got this the fight you all want to see, this Godzilla and Kong. We've got this other film that will kind of tease into that a little bit, so you should come and watch that. And then they sort of hit you with all these kaiju, and now everyone's sort of massive King Ghidorah and Mothra fans, hopefully.
That is great to see. There was a lot of young kids and stuff that are all like, oh, I'm Mothra, I'm King Ghidorah. It is lovely to see a new generation.
It's quite clever, because they've tricked everyone. They came for the Godzilla vs. Kong tease, and they've gone out having presumably really enjoyed the other kaiju and getting to know them more.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good way that they've, you know, very, very similar to how once, you know, Marvel got us hooked with like Iron Man and Captain America and Hulk, all the ones we all know. And then once they got that audience who they knew would come back for every film, they said, okay, here's Ant-Man, here's Guardians of the Galaxy, here's all these characters you've never heard of before. Yes. But you know, you think you're coming for the Avengers teasers, but actually you're just going to fall in love with these characters, and everyone's going to be massive Groot fans, and it's kind of the same what they've done here, and it's very clever, and it's a great format for getting unknown characters into cinema. And if anything good is going to come out of this cinematic universe craze, I think it's that it is finally going to get some of these lesser kind of C-list characters into the public eye.
Yeah, into the spotlight. It's kind of like for years when they're trying to get Wonder Woman on the big screen.
Yeah.
Like they finally got her there and everyone loves her. It's like
they're very hesitant. Very hesitant.
Yeah, it's like what's this? We like this character. Well, we knew that was going to happen all along. Like you say, John, I respect that they've done that with all these characters because you say kids running around going, look at me, I'm Mothra.
Yeah.
All that, which is freaking adorable, obviously.
Adorable.
Right. Okay. So let's get on to the film itself now.
The beef.
Like
radioactive Zilla.
What we'll do is
I call it Big Fella.
Big fella.
Big fella. Big fella versus hairy boy. That's what I'm looking forward to.
What we'll do is we'll go a quick sentence summary of what you thought of the film, and then we'll delve into each person's insight. So we'll start with you, James. In a nutshell, what were your thoughts on the film?
It was, as I've said before, it's a fantastic address, love letter to Godzilla fans. Like they literally ticked so many of the boxes for it. It did have some slight theme things that could have been implemented, but still a fantastic film. Fantastic, lovely film. Addressed so many points.
How are you, sir?
I went into it expecting to enjoy it. I came out absolutely loving it.
Yeah. Myself, I wanted it to be great. I thought it was only good. That is the best way I can surmise it. I feel like we got dessert without having the starter and the main. That's my summary.
Oh my god!
I know. Someone didn't like it.
Oh my god!
Honestly, I'm looking at James' face. James's face. It's like
my butt is tightening up.
I've just told him.
Do you need the smelling salts, James?
I need a hug.
It's like I've just told him that we have to
Hold
sue
me,
the
John.
people.
Hold me.
We're hugging. We're hugging.
I've been invited to a lie.
He thought he was coming in to praise.
This
Zilla,
is an intervention.
Sodzilla.
No, I won't have this. I won't have this.
But he said it was good. Like, you know.
No, I
It's not Godzilla. It's Godzilla.
This is a Godzilla.
It's more than that.
Would you like me to expand first then?
No!
I don't want to hear any more from you.
I've got my own things about it. Even though I absolutely love it, I can still see some of the things about it. So.
Yeah. I absolutely adored all the monsters. I thought, they've everything looks realistic, as ridiculous it is to say that about a film about giant monsters. I like that there's like a task force of humans that like follow them and everything like that. What I wasn't a fan of is that we didn't, like at the end of Godzilla, we kind of had, it was just Godzilla and the Mutos were like another thing. We very quickly went from Godzilla and one Muto to everything in one go, and I feel like their introduction deserved more gravitas. Like just the idea that there are more monsters in this universe is exciting enough by itself, and I feel like trying to quickly fix the problems that they didn't get to Godzilla quick enough in the first film meant that they put their foot on the gas a little bit too quickly in this film. And I feel like Mothra's introduction at the start, I feel like could have been 10 minutes longer just itself. Like, how mind-blowing there's a cocooned monster that's going to turn into a dock-off butterfly that's going to own the skies. I feel like maybe the film could have been half an hour longer just to let it breathe a little bit. Or they could have taken out one kaiju to let the others spread their wings a little bit easier, if you pardon the pun. And for King Ghidorah, who's supposed to be like, I kind of see him as the Joker of this universe, if you like he's Godzilla's rival. Like, I mean, we are going to spoil the film, but spoilers and all that shit.
Spoilers. Yeah. Run if you haven't seen it.
The film ends with arguably Godzilla's biggest nemesis already dead.
Or is he?
Or is he, of course? Cause
to be fair, that does happen in the films a lot, but
and this is something I'd like to appreciate. I'd like to get from yourself. So how do you feel about the fact that obviously there's another Mothra egg, but
Mothra always comes back.
But Mothra obviously
you can't
dies.
get rid of Mothra, no matter how many sprays you get or whatever. Just Mothra
it just always comes back.
Sprays.
I also felt that they raised the bar so high with the direction in the first one that there wasn't the kind of same epic scale even though there was more going on. Do you understand what
That's my only thing. That's
Yeah.
what I kind of meant about theme, but I'll go into that because that is something I do agree with.
Do you understand what I mean?
I
there?
do, yeah. And I think the film's phenomenal. There's loads of stuff that I'll defend to the end of my days.
Yeah.
But there's a certain thing where, after seeing the first one and its theme of this kind of grand scale, this huge thing, this monster that you're not quite seeing, and I mean, even if people say you don't see Godzilla enough, there was something about it where it made it really special when you saw him.
Because it built it up more.
Then you've got Kong, where it introduces that you get to see a lot more creatures, but a lot of lesser scale ones.
Yes.
Never mind that it's got the whole, because we had a very grey, very kind of modern kind of approach with Godzilla, and with Kong we've got very colourful. You've got Vietnam, you've got very unique music, you've got this own unique theme now.
It had its vibe, absolutely.
And then you've got King of Monsters, which is phenomenal. The amount of creatures in it is amazing. But the amount of action scenes that we had and stuff like that, because I feel like it could have had loads more and stuff like that, but it didn't allow it to kind of put itself out there with its own theme.
Yes.
We just had time to see the creatures fight and stuff like that. And as you said,
Yes.
there was a lot of things that needed to be introduced and done. And
Yeah.
it's a very difficult and hard thing to do. And it didn't quite allow it to have its own unique theme.
Yeah.
It did allow it to do, in my opinion, all the things right and tick off the boxes. But it didn't allow it to have not only the appeal for kaiju fans, but the appeal for film critics and stuff out
Film
there.
fans.
They would analyze it differently. Kaiju fans and comic fans and stuff like that will look at it and be like, this was amazing, action packed, all the kaiju ticked all my boxes. But as a film critically, even I have to see that it didn't quite have its own soul as much as the other ones.
Yes.
It was just filled with love. It really was.
Very much this film feels like the first proper film of the kaiju universe, and movie producers have got whoever's financing the film has got this big tick list of things that they want to happen, and it's kind of like you say, stripping the film of its soul to make sure it meets all the criteria ahead of Godzilla vs Kong. And it's kind of this happens in films all the time, especially comic book films where they throw too much at the wall and hope everything sticks. And by all means, this isn't me implying for 1 second that Godzilla 2 wasn't a good film, either ball with it. But like you say, whenever Godzilla was on screen, it didn't allow the time to appreciate the epic scale of Godzilla in the same way that the first one got so very right.
There's a few times that I really did get this huge feeling of oh my word.
Yeah.
One was King Ghidorah's first appearance. That was phenomenal to see.
Yeah.
And Mothra, when Mothra first really appeared, when you realised that, if for kaiju fans out there, that the twins were involved, I don't know if you know, that's a huge thing with Mothra, is that there's the heralds of Mothra, which are these two twins.
Right, okay, so I went for a loo break just as around Mothra was coming out of the cocoon. So have I missed something here?
Yes, so what you probably would have missed is that one of the characters, whose name escapes me, is travelling on the Monarch vessel. And it turns out that their twin sister is at the site for Mothra.
Okay.
And all of a sudden you realise that, oh my word, these are the twins that are to do with Mothra.
Right, okay.
In the original films, there's these two twins, which I'm not going to delve into too much, but they're tiny in the film. They're like borrowers. But it's kind of it ticks that box where you're like,
Right,
oh my
okay.
word, that's them. And then you realise about Mothra, and then Mothra comes forth, and the original music, a variant of that, plays.
Oh, wow.
And it's phenomenal because you get the old music back and you're just amazed.
Did you have such a nerd bird?
I really did. It was bulging and it was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It really was.
So I can respect that. There's certain moments that you've invested all that time, so that was a payoff too.
Yeah, so that was a payoff for that. But once again, it's not so much seen by people who haven't seen some of that.
Yeah.
So it's so tailored to kaiju fans that it turns off some fans of just average films.
Yeah, you've got to get that balance right.
Exactly. So many Easter eggs that I'm very happy with, and I'll love it and continue watching the film over and over again. But that I can't argue when people are like, oh, it wasn't quite like this, and it's well, it's because they shoved so many Easter eggs in.
Well, the perfect thing, here's my best way of summarising it. Godzilla using atomic breath for the first time was more in the first film.
Yeah.
Was more spectacular than thermonuclear Godzilla obliterating Ghidorah at the end of this one.
Thermonuclear Godzilla is quite a big thing, though.
Listen, it was awesome.
Have you seen that in the original, though, as well?
I know of it.
Because burning Godzilla has been a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I was quite glad that to turn up.
It
But
was
I understand,
awesome,
though, as what you're
but
saying. It's a bigger thing.
But the way it was executed, it was a little bit rushed.
It was because in the first instance where it was introduced, it had a much bigger meaning, and it was delved into a lot more. I don't know if you know about the origins of burning Godzilla, but in that, it's meant to be that Godzilla's kind of gotten to a thermonuclear state, and throughout the film, Godzilla is basically dying.
It's like a time bomb.
Yeah, it's like a ticking time bomb, and it's gonna go off. And it's a much bigger thing because then you're knowing, like, he's got this increase in like red beams and all that stuff. But Godzilla's gonna melt down and gonna die. And in the new one, it was cool. It was addressed, but it was just like a little power up. Compared to the bigger meaning for that film, where it was like, wow, this is like the end. That was the end of the Heisei era. My favorite ones. So for that was like my Infinity War. Like, it was like the culmination, and it was fun to get it, but it was just a little tick. And as you said, it didn't have as much of an impact.
But could it come in more in future films? Is my wonder. Like, if that was a little bit of a hint at what was going to happen.
Yeah, it could be.
Theoretically,
could come in a bigger way.
I will say the final 30 seconds are up there with some of the best moments of the first Godzilla, where where a couple of other kaiju things, all come around him. You have like that mammoth thing. Which, did you recognise that, or has that just been made?
All of them are brand new.
All of them are brand new. Okay.
Behemoth, Scylla.
Obviously, you had one of the old Mutos as well.
What was the other one?
Rhodan was there as well.
Methuselah, whatever. But the three new ones that they made.
Yeah, when they all bowed and Godzilla's there.
I do have a problem with that, though.
Oh, do you?
I have a problem with that scene.
Oh, wow. That was my favourite thing, and you have a problem with
there's a tiny problem with that.
Right, go for it.
If we're going into that all of these are meant to be creature-based stuff, and they're going into the whole alpha thing and they operate differently, I can appreciate that completely. There is a Muto that is also there. Muto have been established to be a predatory kind of creature to the Godzilla species. Why would Muto be there and bowing to Thingy at the end?
So, right, is that a thing? You're saying there's like a hole in the established canon of the new Godzilla?
There is, yeah. And there's a cool animation that kind of delves into it, walking with Godzilla, basically like walking with dinosaurs, but walking with Godzilla. Don't know if you had the chance to see that.
No,
I feel like I should.
Absolutely.
Delves a little bit into that, so please go see that. But in the film they talk about, and you find the egg in the skeleton of like another Zilla species.
Right, okay.
And they're meant to be that they prey upon in groups Godzilla species, and that's why they are rivals, and that's why for the whole film they're just chasing and fighting each other.
Yeah.
And that they both go for sources of radiation. They're just like countering species.
Yeah.
So it's very strange to see in this one that one would appear and be like, oh yeah, you'll be my boss now, when it's like, no, you feast upon them.
Isn't that just so typical, right? I'm looking at this, I've got issues from a film perspective, whereas you look at it from a comic book thing.
Yeah.
My favourite part is the bit you have an issue with.
I mean, it still visually was amazing to see him there, because that kind of goes back to like Monster Island and stuff like that. Well, Godzilla is in charge of all the monsters.
Yeah.
But that one, all the other kaiju that they introduced to do that, absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And I get why, once again, they couldn't get the rights to other existing kaiju.
Well, they've got to quietly just go about the business now. Has it gone down well in Japan? What they're doing with the Western Godzilla films now?
They did appear to love it. They loved the direction of it last time I checked.
Yeah.
I haven't quite seen, because I know there's been a lot of controversy with like how film critics and stuff have been accepting it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It does, I understand that it gets a little bit lower than some of the other ones, but there has been a thing, and there's a nature of a lot of reviewers being very critical that it needs to be a story, that it needs to be a flop. And it's not. It hasn't done as well. It's still a successful film. It's doing great. But there is this whole thing like, oh, it didn't do this. Oh, it's a failure. It's a complete failure. It's this, and this. And I only know that on the Western side of things. I've been so preoccupied with that and wanting it to do well so we get more kaiju films.
Absolutely.
That I haven't quite checked how it's done in the other markets yet. So that is something I need to check, actually.
Interesting point. So, what about yourself?
Me.
So you say you really enjoyed the film. Look,
yes,
so excited.
Yeah. Oh, it's like a little puppy just having a great time.
So, so for me, I think a lot of what you guys have talked about, I didn't really notice.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm sort of going in, I hadn't seen the first one, I hadn't seen Skull Island.
Right, okay.
And in fact, my only experience of Godzilla prior to this was Godzilla 98.
Yeah.
So I know, I'm sorry. So and that scene at the end of The Simpsons where he grabs the plane. And,
but that's canon.
That is definitely canon.
Once we get to about 35,000 feet, he usually does let go. It's just a
It's so
that is
beautiful.
real. That happens.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So I think I went in very sort of, because I'd read a one review about it before I went in, and it sort of said, that the monsters are really good, but the story's a bit naff, and the human characters.
Kind of like a bit of a Thanos retread, isn't
kind
it?
of, yeah, cardboard cutout sort of.
Yeah.
So I went in quite open-minded, and as I say, I've gone from having no real interest in this franchise at all to actually being kind of okay. I sort of want to know what this is about.
So you're gonna go back and
yeah,
watch
I imagine
the
I
films,
will at some point.
That's a success
yeah,
in terms of
yeah.
for them.
Absolutely.
So obviously now that you say it, I guess it was quite rushed. I felt like there were a lot of monsters popping up quite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I think maybe a part of me assumed that some of this had been touched upon already previously, so that's why they could get away with it being so fast.
Yeah.
Possibly not. One thing I was very surprised at was I actually thought the human characters were relatively interesting.
They weren't as bad as the reviewers had made.
Yeah, like I actually kind of. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things, isn't it? You pay to see the big monsters. You know,
yes.
You don't go in to like see. Oh, I wonder how that kid from Stranger Things is doing. You know, it's kind
Once
of
again, canon. This is what happened.
Yeah.
After that, even though I haven't seen season.
Yeah, it's
The end of season 2.
so.
I haven't seen any of
It's
Stranger
good. You
Things.
should give it a watch. It's
on the list.
It's
Yeah.
on the list. That's
Series
a big list, though,
yeah.
isn't it?
Oh mate, even James knows about this list is.
about your list.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually found like the whole like family dynamic in it actually kind of intrigued me. Like I was there for Godzilla, but I was
Just a little pat on the shoulder.
Yeah, I
I'm
was
there for you, mate.
I was more than happy to like hang out for with these guys for a bit as well. So that surprised me. That was not something I was expecting to be able to say about a Godzilla film.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly. I mean, I saw it in 3D. You know, I had the whole whack, and
What, did you IMAX it or was it just?
it wasn't IMAX. I'm
Did
afraid.
you box it? Get
we,
flung
we
around?
don't have an IMAX in North Wales.
Mate, you should clearly have an IMAX. They've been up on
Need
the
an
village.
IMAX.
Yeah.
We can't even fund our NHS. Come on.
Yeah. Let's not make this political.
We're not delving into that. We're talking
Politics!
about made-up monsters.
Yes, but to be fair, all battling for a position of power. You know, I mean,
Like
we've seen that.
politicians.
Like politicians.
They are made-up
exactly.
monsters.
Godzilla for Prime Minister.
Mate, I would vote.
I would vote.
Shit out of
Prime
that.
Minister Zilla.
Hey, if a dog has become mayor, you can have anything.
That's actually a thing.
That's right. Yeah, it is a thing. Vouch for. We've got the proof.
Yes.
So where were you going? So you said you obviously gave it the full whack. You saw
Yeah, I
it
saw the
3D,
full
so-
whack, and I enjoyed it for the
Yeah.
for the most part. I think I wasn't thinking about it much.
Right,
I was
okay.
just in it. I was enjoying the ride. I
Yeah.
was, and from that, I guess this is quite a good perspective because you know we've got you, you're quite up to date with the films, but perhaps not as up to date with the mythology. We've got
Yeah.
James, who's both, and you've got me, who's just this sort of little goblin kind of in the middle.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I think it's good we've got these three different perspectives. I think.
Yeah.
A goblin's perspective is always important.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're even going to let us get married soon. It's,
my word, are
yeah,
They're
goblin
gonna give
rights
you-
are really
wow.
going up.
I don't
But
know if I'd
vote?
vote for that.
I don't know if I would.
I don't think I agree with Goblin rights.
but from little goblin perspective, it was just a fun ride.
Yeah.
It was just strap yourself in, enjoy the big funky butterfly.
Yeah.
One thing that's really bothering me in blockbusters these days is the sheer amount of property damage. Like,
Yes.
in the same way that the whole of upstate New York had been obliterated by the end of Endgame,
Yeah.
like, now they've knocked Boston off the map as well in Godzilla.
Well, luckily they're not in the same universe. Otherwise, the whole world is just.
Yeah, are they not? Like,
I would love it to
can we
be.
please...
Once again, spoilers. Even though I presume everyone's seen it. The click happened. Half the people go, kaiju come up and start smashing the
I
rest.
do like
that.
that,
would be
yeah.
phenomenal.
At the end of Infinity War, the snap
Yeah.
happens and like Godzilla just comes
Yeah.
And then they come. It's like, oh great.
just like Thanos riding Godzilla.
This
into-
cumulative mass of just
Well,
everything
I've sort
going
of
wrong.
got this idea because we never really established how the Infinity Gauntlet works. Like, do you just kind of snap your fingers and make a wish for what happens? Do you have to like
Yeah.
visualize it? Like, I
Does
don't
it
know.
have to be a click as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Does one hand clapping
But what I'm
work?
seeing in Ghostbusters, right, when they're told, you know, the next thing you think will be the form that this thing will take, and
Yeah.
obviously he thinks about the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. That's
Yeah.
kind of it. At the moment when he snapped his fingers, Thanos just happened to think about Godzilla, and suddenly he's brought him into
Yeah, like right as
existence.
he's about to snap his fingers, like Tony Stark, he goes, "Don't think about Godzilla."
Oh no, it's Godzilla.
Can this please happen? Come on,
Yeah.
if you can get Kong into the kaiju world, you
I
can
hope
get
so.
Thanos as well.
Yeah.
It should be only a small step from here.
Godzilla with the Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh my goodness.
I want to see that.
I want
His
to
little
see that.
hands aren't big enough for
Yeah,
that.
but if they can widen it for Hulk, they can widen it for
That's
Godzilla.
true, yeah.
So
Now that sounds like a topic for a different thing.
Yes,
and the
that's-
name of a film.
that sounds like
If
rule
you can widen it for Hulk,
Yeah.
you can widen it for Godzilla. That's an interesting bass.
Can Rule 34 not be a thing for that? Okay, so bringing it to a wonderful close, where do you think this MonsterVerse is heading after Godzilla vs. Kong? Obviously, referencing the post-credit scene at the end. Also, just a side thing, I felt like Charles Dance was criminally underused in the film.
Apparently he's not going to be in the next one.
Is he not?
I've heard he's not going to be in the next one.
That's really quite a damn shame.
That is quite something, because, yeah.
Like his reputation and everything, like obviously he's in the film, like, oh, they've done really well, they've got quite a big name there.
And then he goes.
And then he just...
Even though I know the rest of the actors are going to be in this one. Another interesting thing, the guy, the main lead, is the celebrity in King Kong, the film. You know, when they're doing the film,
yes,
and
he is.
He's
Oh,
actually
really?
from that. So he's actually
that guy.
in a,
It's the Peter Jackson.
he's actually in King Kong.
Mr.
prior.
Bruce Baxter.
Yeah,
whatever
I
his
did
name
not
is.
realise that.
Yeah,
That's
there you go.
brilliant.
So he's the guy who's like, listen, most heroes have got a beer gut and a bald spot. I'm just a superhero, you know, the guy who like chickens out and all that.
It's
Yeah, it's
all
him.
connected.
And
It's all connected.
it's all connected. All connected. He's dealt with King Kong, he knows.
So, obviously, we have King Ghidorah's head that Godzilla bit off before he got nailed by the oxygen bomb.
Now, there's a few things that can go on with that.
Right, I'm going to say a word.
Oh.
Mecha.
Ah!
Is that where you think they're going to go?
One of the many ways it could go. It
Yeah.
depends. If they delve into mecha in the universe, it'll
Yeah.
be very interesting to see how they do that without making it
Without
too
making it too
Transformers.
ridiculous, yeah.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
obviously, like I was saying before, it's kaiju, but they've kind of made it realistic.
Yes, and
Like,
it's going to be strange to introduce
The whole suspension of
mechanical.
disbelief, like as I say, in you know, audiences these days, like we're talking the last 20 years, it's become far harder to like run with it. You have to ground it within realism and then build up from that. I feel like going mecha would be too much of a leap.
Yeah, because we
like,
don't want to go
obviously
Pacific Rim 2.
Well,
So.
it's not just that, but it's kind of like obviously massive fans of the comics and you know all the mythology, like you know, like yourself. It wouldn't be too hard of a leap for you to make because you've seen it before, you respect it.
Yes.
But for people like myself, it's kind of like, can I really envision like a continent-sized creature made out of bolts and basically just a giant Dinobot?
There's a few ways they could do it though, because they have King Ghidorah's head.
Mm-hmm.
So for one, they've proved that it regenerates.
Yeah.
So it could come back as a full King Ghidorah. It can come back in one of the many forms that King Ghidorah takes. Des Ghidorah, Death Ghidorah,
So you're saying
Monster X.
there are multiple forms.
There's multiple forms that Ghidorah takes that it could interpret itself into. Now,
Okay.
they could just use its DNA and make something else.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that could be teased with that. There is, what's it called? Loads of people are hoping a monster called Bagan, which has never actually got filmed, but was meant to be his like top monster to fight.
Right, okay.
And that could be made because he's an accumulation of different DNA and
Well,
things like that.
Obviously, they say in Godzilla vs. Kong, it's going to start with those two clashing, and realistically speaking, it'll end with them uniting against a bigger threat.
Me personally, I think it's going to be Destroyer.
Okay.
Which
You're
I don't know
gonna
if
have
you've
to tell
seen
me who
that.
Destroyer is.
Godzilla Crab Satan. That's how they look. Okay?
Godzilla Crab Satan.
Godzilla Crab Satan. It's
Okay.
the villain that Godzilla fights in that last film that I was talking about.
Okay.
It's like one of the coolest creatures that they do. But
Okay.
the
think
reason
I've
it's
got the
important
image in
though
my head.
is because its origin is actually made by the oxygen destroyer being used.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
because they've used the oxygen destroyer and it just had a little bit, they could easily tease it into the film. It's meant to be that even though it destroys all things, it actually interacts with a small microbe and creates new
So
life.
the oxygen destroyer is an actual thing.
It's an actual thing. When they
It wasn't
teased
just
it ages
'cause
ago, it's not just a thing. It's a huge thing.
'cause-
That's what kills him in the original film.
Because that's interesting. Because when it came in the film, I was like, oxygen. What the fresh shit is this? You know, it was like I was.
I love how we thought you were going to swear then, and then you sort of said fresh, and then you swore anyway.
Yeah.
It was.
What the fresh is this? What did you?
Golly gosh.
Jeepers, Batman.
So it's actually that's another little
It's
Easter
a
egg.
huge
Potentially
thing. Huge thing in the
something
law.
huge,
Yeah, because it kills Godzilla. It kills the original Godzilla. That's how
Right,
they
okay.
kill it. But it kills all life. But in
Yeah.
this film, it didn't have much of an impact.
No.
But they could delve into that. It's the origin for this creature. And the big thing for it is its breath attack is meant to be the oxygen destroyer, which is the thing that kills
Oh, that's
Godzilla.
interesting.
So it's a huge thing to then have that.
It makes sense.
So
doesn't it?
that could
Well,
happen.
Let's see if they build on that, and it's not just like a throwaway Easter egg, in the same way that we hope they go somewhere with nuclear Godzilla again in the future.
I hope so.
Rather than just, here's a buffet table of all your favourite foods, but it's only a small plate of each of your favourite foods.
Yeah.
Let's hope we get another buffet with, less choice, but what we do have is more developed and more delicious.
I'm so hungry now.
Should we get some food?
Yeah. Ordering Domino's.
Oh.
So, in terms of Monster Universe, you're very optimistic for what
I'm very optimistic. It's done a very good job in comparison to other universes that are out there. Lots of them have had, real bad, like Batman vs Superman. I was really disappointed with that. With this one, I can see its flaws. Kind of has the whole sequel thing happen to it that usually happens with a sequel film, but it was still really good, really enjoyable, and it still cemented all of the facts, all of the things correctly. Yep. And they're leading into it, and they're charging full ahead into the next one, which is very important. A lot of companies get really scared and they'll retract and change things, and they're steaming full on ahead with what they're planning to do.
Yeah, well, it's out next year, isn't it?
Yeah,
Godzilla
and they're going to keep going with that, and I commend them for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously that film I feel like has to do really well.
Yes.
To keep it going, but I don't see any reason why it's not going to do well.
Yeah.
What are your musings?
Yeah, I do hope that they're not going to start releasing like one every year.
Yes.
I just wonder, like, as good as I'm sure it all is, how long are audiences going to keep paying to come and see Godzilla fight another thing?
I will.
Yeah, but not everyone is as wonderful as you,
It's
James.
kind of like when Star Trek came out against Star Wars. Like, there was a loyal following going, but it still didn't make an awful lot of money because it didn't quite reach out to the mainstream in the same way that your Star Wars, your Avengers do.
But I think that's it. I mean, when you look at Star Wars, they've started releasing them every year now.
And it's actually diluting
it.
Oh, God.
Like, they need to... Like, when you remember the hype we had when Force Awakens was coming out, we're never going to get that again unless they just back off a little bit.
Unless they disappeared for, 20 years or something.
And so I really hope they don't make that same mistake. I mean, maybe they'll make 20 Godzilla films in the next 5 years and it'll all be wonderful.
But by all means, I appreciate it's the anticipation as much as it is.
Yeah, because I've been waiting so long for a real version of this film, and it would dilute it.
Yeah.
It would really water it down.
And I get why they're doing Kong and Zilla next year, because there was such a huge tease in what I honestly have to say is probably the best end credits I've ever seen in recently anyway.
What, with the whole continuing of the story?
With the newspaper things and like the music.
Yeah. That was the thing. That thing. That's usually at the beginning. It was good. I'm glad they put it at the end.
Yeah, and that's that final.
That's the
shot
unique
with, like,
thing that they do.
Yeah, the cave drawing of Kong and Zilla kind of going at it.
They're all going to Skull Island, and Kong ain't happy about it.
I like that, and
they're obviously putting emphasis on Skull Island being quite an important place for kaiju and stuff anyway, obviously, it'd be interesting to see if they introduce any more, if they have any more kaiju in Godzilla vs Kong, with the whole Mothra having a second egg, and obviously an awful lot of them still being alive. So
because it's very interesting, it leads into the film perfectly, because Godzilla, King Ghidorah did the call and all kaiju came. Kong didn't.
Yeah.
Kong didn't have.
I was half expecting him to be in the film, but obviously he's stuck.
You did see his back at one point. There was a screen showing Skull Island, and you saw his back. So he was kind of in it. But I get why they want to do Godzilla and Kong next year, because they want to just kind of get while everyone's riding the wagon. But
while the wave's still going.
After that, let's have a little bit, maybe just a year off, and then
bit of time off, and then do one of them again.
Yeah, get us excited,
It's kind of like Godzilla versus Kong would be the ultimate nerd blowing your load, and then almost 5 minutes later she's like, ready for round 2? Dear God, no! I'm spent. So it's we need that.
Yeah, we do.
That breathing time afterwards.
But then, you know what? If they deliver some kind of Final Wars, just huge monster smash thing to finish it off,
I'd be totally happy with that.
Rather than this dragging it out.
I feel like something is going to come after. There's got to be something after Godzilla and Kong. That's got to be going.
I just don't want a Mothra standalone film, a Rhodan standalone film, and whatever other kaiju. We don't need that level of emphasis on each one. Godzilla, Kong.
We'll see whether other kaiju from different companies might even have a thing though.
Exactly.
Pacific Rim is still around.
I don't want Pacific Rim anywhere near.
Do you like Pacific Rim?
I love the first one.
It has such character because Del Toro is so involved.
Yeah,
and then the second
one just dies in a fire.
The kaiju mean nothing to me in that film. They're so just lackluster. There's no feel to them. In the first one, it was like, oh, there's Knife Head, and oh, there's all of these ones.
They just made an event out of them.
Catch a Big Ten, and then
it's kind of
weakens
obviously not in the same way, but it's kind of like what we were saying with the first Godzilla in terms of the direction. You know, they built them up.
Yeah.
Whereas in King of the Monsters, it was kind of like a little bit more rushed. Obviously, I'm not saying they're in the same. You know, Pacific Rim 2 and Godzilla 2 are in the same realm of quality, because Pacific Rim 2 is like, you know, whale shit, dead plankton, then, you know.
I haven't seen either of these either. I think I'm a failure.
You're not. Well, you're a goblin failure.
You're a goblin. And
You're
you're our goblin.
You're our little goblin. That was so affectionate. Like, that was a genuine moment of love.
Come on, rub me on the head.
We are actually rubbing him on the head.
You know what? I give you a sock. You're free.
Oh, that's an elf. I'm still in bondage.
He looks like a goblin.
He looks like...
Come on.
Let's not delve into...
He doesn't look like Legolas. He's not an elf.
That's a fair point, actually. Right, so, long and the short...
Not you. You look like Legolas.
Oh, excellent. They're taking the hobbits to Isengard.
Don't do that now.
Why'd you do it in tune then?
I was hoping you'd pick up on that. Right, okay. I think we can draw that to a close there, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're about the hour mark now, so I'm probably gone over an hour. I'm going to have to do some editing. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. John, it's been a pleasure as always. James, your velvety voice has made this electric, magnificent, luminous and incandescent and everything in between.
I have loved being here, and I love you.
This has been Beard and the Boyo.
And the Greek.
And the Greek. Beard and the Boyo with a slice of velvet. Please tune in next time for whatever we decide to discuss. We will see you all in the very near future.
Stay beautiful, San Diego.
Bye.
Cheery bye. Beard and the Boyo was recorded in front of a live empty space, starring Jake Saunders, John Bowen and James Hatzisalis.
Also, Mike, get off Twitch.
Also, Mike, get off Twitch.